Welcome to Neurosalience, the OHBM podcast.
All right. Well, welcome to the live version of our Neurosalience podcast. I'm Peter Bandettini, and I'm the host of the podcast. And this is our fourth year doing. Actually, it should be just live audience. It's not like live streaming or anything, but a live audience podcast. And the first couple of years we had like either a controversy in the field, and we've had future-looking sort of panels. But I thought that this year we would have a panel of scientists who are from junior scientists to mid-career scientists from different countries and from different contexts, and to sort of describe their experiences and describe, what's difficult, what's exciting, what's unexpected, sort of give some perspective on what we're all struggling through, and maybe some advice or maybe some just connection to make everyone realize that they're not really alone as they struggle with science. Just to start, first of all, to introduce the whole thing, I have 5 panelists that agreed to be on this podcast. The first one is
Arshiya Sangchooli. Arshiya is also fine.
Okay, Arshiya Sangchooli. And you're a graduate student, PhD candidate in the Neural Systems and Behavioral Lab in Monash University here in Australia, working with Alex Fernito. And you're originally from Iran, and you earned your MD in 2021 from Tehran University of Medical Sciences, and then a master's degree from the University of Melbourne. Okay, the other panelist is Dr. Natasha L, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Brain and Mind Research Center at the University of Sydney, Australia, here. And you earned your PhD in neuroscience from also that institution, working with Professor Mac Shine, and who just is the new Young Investigator Award winner. Then Dr. Ashlea Segal, you're a postdoctoral researcher at Yale. However, you're working within the Wu Tsai Institute under Professors Nenad Sesten and Avram Holmes. And you're originally from Australia, and you earned your PhD from Monash University in 2023. Okay, so then Dr. Stefano Moia, you're a postdoc researcher at the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience at Maastricht University. And previously, you were located at the NeuroX Institute at EPFL. And finally, the most senior member, Dr. Jiajia Yang. He's a full professor of cognitive neuroscience in the Graduate School of Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering and Health Systems at Okayama University in Japan. And he earned his PhD in cognitive neuroscience at Okayama and held positions ranging from postdoctoral researcher to full professorship, and also spent a little bit of time as a visiting professor at the NIH in my group. So with that, we'll get started. So just to provide some context, being in academia, having the privilege to do research is a lot of work, is a lot of work. And it's a really challenging field. You have to make many life decisions, go many different places based on incomplete information about what the environment will be like, what the professor will be like, what the school will be like. And then on top of that, you have to learn all this new information, and then you have to figure out how to ask the right questions to, and then figure out answers to them, and hopefully you can provide new knowledge. And then once you get your PhD, then you have to, start your postdoc, which I feel is like academic nirvana, in my opinion, because a postdoc is where you're not really responsible for too much of a lab, and you can just focus on your research. But at the same time, it has many challenges because you also, in many contexts, you have to write your own grants, or you have to do what your professor wants you to do, or then at the same time be looking for jobs. And making that next stage is also very, very challenging, finding a position, and how to present your work, how to generate enough papers to be marketable, how to get grants to then make the next stage. So with all that context, we'll start the discussion. First question: what first made you interested in doing science or doing brain research in general? And anyone can start, and as many people as you want can contribute.
I'll start. Hi, I'm Natasha, or Tash. I always loved science when I was a little kid. And then I read a book, The Brain That Changes Itself, a long time ago. And I was amazed at the capacity for neuroplasticity. And then I started reading more and I realized we don't really know anything about the brain. And that was sort of the start. And I was maybe 14 years old. And so here I am. And I had the pleasure of meeting Max Shine in my undergrad, and his passion and love for neuroscience has further fueled mine.
That's great.
Hi, I'm Ashlea. I guess I find this question tricky because I don't have this romantic story of there was this book, the movie, the thing that I saw that inspired me. I guess I kind of just followed a path of curiosity. I did an undergraduate in psychology just because I was interested in it. I then took a year off, but then realized I really miss science, whatever that meant to me. Some way discovered Alex Benito, fell into his lab, and then just have continued to follow the path of curiosity since then.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Steph. So I think I'm close to Ashley as a backstory. When I started my bachelor in psychology, I really wanted to be a therapist. And then at a certain point, I realized that therapy was like being a therapist was not my way to approach the world. And at the same time, I was lucky enough to be enrolled besides psychology into an interdisciplinary program. And that enriched me with a lot of different visions from many different fields. And the more I was looking into that, the more I was like, oh, it would be great if there was something that I can do with all of this knowledge and bringing knowledge together. And that's where I found neuroimaging. That was the perfect answer because it was joining informatics with mathematics, with physics, with psychology, with biology and everything else. And so I guess I struck with the path and stayed there ever since.
Hey, I'm Jiajia Yang. So that would be 25 years ago. My undergraduate student. My major is computer science. So I was trying to maybe I can create a computer like a human brain. But when I look at some book, I found that human brain is so complex. It's not so easy to create a computer like that. So that may be the start point. I was interested in human brain. So I started my master course when I go to Japan, and they are focusing on using the psychological method to see some kinds of human perceptions. Then I met functional MRI and start my brain science. That's the start point for me.
Hi, I'm Arshiya. So no, that's a very interesting question. It never really felt like I chose, oh, I'm going to do science. And I think there's a particularly sort of a very admirable sort of kind of scientist who, you know, they have a certain sense of like mission or sort of like this like big grand question that they, you know, they're particularly excited about, you know, sorts of dissecting consciousness, or, you know, where do feelings come from? Where do thoughts come from? And, you know, how do I cure, you know, this disease or that disease, etc. I think for me, it sort of was just this very gradual and very contiguous process of, you know, I was in high school. I enjoyed learning things. I had a lot of fun learning, you know, just all these different sciences. And I happened to do particularly well in the Iranian National University entrance exam, which is, you know, similar to many other Asian countries, is how you get to select your courses. And sort of everyone around me was like, oh, it would be such a shame if you didn't become a doctor. And, you know, I was sort of, it took me 2-3 years to decide that I will not drop out of my sort of my MD. And, you know, I think there were many arguments as to, oh no, why would you? If you know what a researcher does if they don't have a grant, they like, you know, just perish and disappear into the ether, you know, and, you know, it wouldn't be so nice if you had the option B of becoming a doctor. So yeah, I sort of finished my MD and sort of decided that without a shadow of a doubt, I do not want to do clinical practice. I enjoyed, I mean, many aspects of, you know, caregiving is quite nice, but it's more sort of the structural factors I just did not enjoy. And yeah, I did a bunch of RAs and internships and realized that I do really enjoy learning things and solving puzzles. And as echoing what Stefano was saying and what Ash was saying, it's just neuroscience is so full of so many interesting puzzles, and you can really sort of interconnect these very diverse fields with very interesting approaches and perspectives. And yeah, so I stayed when I got to computational neuroscience.
Okay. Yeah, no, it seems like, it's sort of a common theme. And I think this is the same with me, is that, there's sort of a natural, just a curiosity, and then sort of an affinity to want to, solve puzzles and sort of liking that sort of thing as an end in itself. And I think that sort of drives a lot of us. We're sort of curious about and the brain itself is like the biggest puzzle in that regard. And it's us. So it's sort of like, there's so many levels. So let's just get into the sort of the main questions that people might resonate with, is like, right when you start graduate school, or maybe anywhere in your path, there's always something. I mean, for me, it was sort of like 2 years. I was just still searching for a thesis project, and that was becoming a crisis in some sense, because it's like, oh my gosh, what do I? And then the first hints of fMRI came along, and that was an amazing thing. But that was sort of like and there's many difficult stages along the way. So for any of you, speak up as you want. What so far has been the most challenging aspect of your career?
I do have this distinct memory of, I think it was maybe 2017 or 18. I remember seeing this paper from, I think, Danny Bassett, and they sort of had this very beautiful, very intriguing title about, brains, the brain's sort of energy landscape, and sort of controllability and entropy and all that. It's like, oh my gosh, what does it even mean to, entropy? I learned about that all the back in, chemistry class in high school. I remember going through the paper and sort of reading some of the equations, and then going to the supplement, trying to see how all these derivations relate to each other. And sort of after 3-4 hours of going through them, I just reached at this point where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I just do not have the mathematical background. This is too hard. And I had this crisis of, this is so interesting, but I just cannot penetrate this. So I guess since then, I've been on this journey to slowly learn more maths, just taking courses here and there, and reading stuff. And yeah, that's been just a bit of I just have huge math envy, and that's been a bit of a defining thing.
Okay.
I think for me, the trickiest parts have been the transition. So the transition into a PhD, for example, or the transition into a postdoc. I think everyone in this room probably feels and experiences imposter syndrome, but I think it is at an all-time high when you're in an unfamiliar environment and you don't have friends to console or comfort or talk about these challenges with. And so I guess the way that I overcame this was being really intentional about building community. And so I think when you feel less alone, even if you're feeling like an imposter, unless you're surrounded by friends that also feel like this as well.
I think for me, it's been not so much on the side of the science as much as on the side of work-life balance and mental health balance. And that's something that I don't think we're, at least my generation or me, was not thought enough about how to do it well. And that's something that I think it's also part of the imposter syndrome and the intrinsic challenges and feeling of uncertainty that we have in this moment, especially in this moment, and that doesn't always fit. And so it's really hard to try to find a way to love this job and keep doing the job that you love, and still go home and be there and not be overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, no, actually, right. I mean, I think that you brought up a term, imposter syndrome, and I think that a lot of people, it's a natural feeling, and people sort of work through it just by realizing, oh, so I'm actually doing the thing that and I'm really actually doing it, and so it sort of takes maybe some iterations of just working to do that, and that is challenging, and yeah. So any other answers?
So probably I'm the most senior member here. I almost cannot remember too much about the students, but when I start running a lab, so the context of more than 40 people in the lab, you have to manage the budget, how to let all the students can do their things. So I think the most challenging thing is when I go back from NIH, I was very interested in to see the layer stuff in the human brain, but functional memory is an amazing technique, but still have the issue because it's not directly to measure the neural activity. So I was trying to start some animal studies. So from 2022, I started to create a layer function platform for the non-human primates, specifically for the common marmoset, because I doesn't have any experience for the animal studies. So I was thinking it's not too hard to do. I also think that the monkey also can do almost a task in the scanner. But when I started to do that, I just discovered that the monkey doesn't like the scanner and error. Almost they only can go to the scanner for like 10 to 20 minutes. So it's the hard thing for me. And also half of the budget of the grant I have to pay for the whole system. So that's really like a gamble. So I was trying to do some things, but it almost take about 1 year and a half to record the first data set. So I just want to say, if when you start to trying something and fails, doesn't mistake, so you can just keep doing the new things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, and one thing about science, I mean, this is actually a really interesting sort of thing because it's like, it's easy to sort of, you have you're used to being an expert. Once you get your PhD, you're an expert on something. But to really keep things going, you have to sort of constantly dive into things that you're not an expert on, that you're completely an amateur on, and you're just trying to learn. And then you're worried that people are going to judge you, or they think you don't know what you're doing, or you might do something stupid, and you have to. It's a lot of work, and it's necessary. And that's what's kind of cool about what a scientist's job is that they're forced to constantly embrace new modalities or new analysis techniques, and so they're kind of overwhelmed, like you're saying. It's like overwhelmed on one side and excited on the other, and you're always balancing that. So maybe this might be related in some sense. So is there any one aspect of the job that's of your position that's most satisfying? That's like you actually, keeps you coming into lab every day, and that really makes you happy.
Sometimes it's definitely not there, like the passion drops away. But I think the thing that is very satisfying about this job is that you can keep asking questions and you're never quite 100% solved on answering this one question. I feel like with every paper I publish, it's not like I've 100% got the answer and I'm definitely right. It's that there's this opportunity to come back, and there's all of these amazing researchers coming up with different ideas and different approaches and new neuroimaging techniques that then makes me go, oh, that might be another cool way to look at that other follow-up question that you have. So there's always this motivation and curiosity that I think there's no other job that could satisfy that for me.
Yeah, I think just learning new things. I just had just this moment a few days ago, and especially when you sort of, as you develop more of the background necessary to sort of engage with the breadth of, technique and, all of the approaches and all of the interesting things that people do in neuroimaging and computational neuroscience, the more you the more of that skill set that you develop, the more you can just sort of throw yourself into any corner of this whole field. And a few days ago, I was sort of going through like SciPy's code base, looking at these numerical integration things, and it just occurred to me, wow, what am I doing? Like I'm reading all of these niche sorts of engineering papers and, comparing, their approach with like, SciPy, trying to come up with like, some good parallelization for this very particular problem. And it's all so interesting and so niche and so just really, extremely fascinating. So yeah, that's just, so rewarding.
Okay, for me, as a teacher, I'm working with young guys every day. So my mental age is almost 30. As a scientist, I was very enjoying. You can think in new things, and you can challenge every new idea every day. So that's.
I second that. So For me, it's definitely the creative process that goes into science. That's the most satisfying part that I go and wake up and I'm excited about and I go to the office and it takes over. But it's also the people around me and specifically like the collaboration that we can create, the people that we meet at conferences and the network that we create and all of the interesting things that these people bring to the table, and especially my students as well. As you were saying, it's so satisfying to see them growing and learning the trick of the trades and challenging themselves and figuring it out and be there for them and support them in the process. And that's something that I love in this moment.
Yeah, I have to say that another thing that's satisfying, at least I mean, there's a lot of things that's satisfying to me, but just coming to this meeting and sort of having this sense of community of all these people who use these different modalities, but we all kind of care sort of about the same thing, and it's all very complementary, and you get a real visceral sense of a worldwide community that is very welcoming and very open and very collaborative. And I feel, I feel that that's not always the case in other fields in science. A lot of science, there's a term that they kind of eat their young. It's like they kind of keep people down, and everyone's sort of angry and they're trying to be first or whatever. And I think still the culture is naturally more open and collaborative here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you were saying. This is an extremely unique community. I mean, I haven't sort of seen every field, but I sort of had this sort of journey through sort of various subfields of medicine, public health, and like epidemiology, etc. And also I have a lot of sort of friends in the harder sciences, etc. But this is just such a unique. I never expected to feel such a sense of community and family with like a professional community of people who are meant to be just my colleagues. But yeah, it's just extremely unique, and I'm eternally grateful for it.
Okay. So is there anything that you didn't expect that surprised you once you got into what you're doing? Is there like, once you got started, you're like, oh, I didn't know I had to know this or do this? Or is there anything that like took you by surprise or that settled in like, oh, I actually have to write grants. or things like that.
One thing that I found surprising, and it's on the side of I found surprising that I loved it, and I was not expecting this. Is like, as you were saying, like many people say, oh, like you finish your PhD, you have to start writing grants, and it's such a process. And the first time that I wrote a grant, I was like, this is fantastic. I love this. Like I prefer to write grants than paper to a certain extent, because like that's the moment in which I can sit down and use my creative, like the creativity process is there, and I can make time to read papers rather than having to chase the last data analysis and keep my eyes on a computer. And that was me was surprising. And the other surprising part was the teaching. At the beginning, I was thinking I'm never going to be a teacher. I'm just going to do research. And now that I'm looking forward to positions that might not have teaching points, I think I'm gonna miss that so much if I don't do it anymore. And that's incredible. And that's something that I learned about myself in this career that I was never expecting.
I think I share similar thoughts. Of the thing that surprised me most was the creative process and how much storytelling there is to science. It's not just the numbers and the analysis that you do. The storytelling is almost just as important. And I think from the very beginning, I never appreciated until now.
Okay.
I'd love it if Stefano could expand on. Do you actually look forward to writing grants? Because if you do, that would be amazing. Because I've been it's been this paranoia that, oh my God, like everything is fun and games now, but there will come the day when I will have to sit down. But do you actually enjoy it?
I do enjoy that process a lot, because like, okay, it's at the end of the day, you start understanding that it's a number game. Right. It's like when you take like 20 pictures and one of them is good. And if the grant process is made well, you get feedbacks, and then you can construct, like, it's the moment in which you can construct a conversation with somebody that helps you making better science. Now, there's also have to come the time in which you make the science, and that's maybe challenging if you write too many grants. And there might have been times in which I got lost in the process. But yeah, I don't know, I find it fun.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for the positive message.
Well, that's actually a good, I mean, it's a good mindset to have, because I mean, a lot of people don't like the right grants because they think, oh, this is this isn't my paper, so it's not really useful because it's not a paper. And it's, chances are I'll get rejected. And so it's like people feel it's a waste of their time, but in fact, it's not. It's actually, you're right. It helps sharpen and hone your ideas.
Yeah, and I think that, like, for instance, that's the same what happens when you're sitting in an institutional meeting where we give project reports, right? Like when you have to start a project, because that's the moment in which you can give feedback and you can receive feedback. And once the paper is out, especially for how we perceive the reviewing process and putting our deliverables outside, it's really a moment in which you cannot do anything anymore, right? That's stationary, and then it's either you make it or you break it. And the process before it's so much more fun. And I think that there are some changes in how we do academia in this moment, like for instance, register reports that are gonna actually bring closer writing grants to writing papers, because once you write the grant, like that's the first part of your register report, and so you start publishing it right away.
So maybe taking that grant writing thread here. So most of you are postdocs, one graduate student, and are you concerned about your future as far as, obviously, with the world geopolitics and funds being directed elsewhere and science being challenged? How much does that concern you? And what are your plans for? How are you positioning yourself? Are you trying to look for positions right now? Or what's your thought process there? I mean,
I guess setting aside geopolitics for a moment, because that's a whole can of worms, especially given my region of origin.
It is different every single country. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Australia is probably fine. Well, no, actually, Australia's had its own problems.
Oh, country of origin, I meant Iran, so a bit less fine. But yeah, in general, I think I've reached a sort of bit of sort of state of acceptance, I guess, because I mean things look extremely grim. Science funding does not look like it'll get significantly any better on a global scale, and there's just a lot of competition, even a lot of sorts of research roles and sorts of industry roles outside academia are sort of closing. And yeah, looks pretty bleak. And I guess my mindset right now is that I guess I'll deal with it. If I have to leave academia, I will, and I'll go practice as a psychiatrist or something.
I guess I feel grateful to just be here. I didn't think I would be here today. Like, I didn't think I would do a PhD, let alone be sitting in this room with all of these people. And so I think for me, and I also think I could be happy doing a whole bunch of different things. I don't think science can look different in a lot of different ways. And so for me, I'm just following this path. And if it runs out, I'll do something else. And I think I will still find meaning and still be happy.
Wow, that's beautiful. And
that was really beautiful. Yeah, that was inspiring.
I'm so much more of a pessimist. Yeah, it's really hard. I think in Australia, we haven't had the best funding. It's very difficult to get funding. So my solution was leave. I'll be starting a postdoc overseas in a couple of months. But originally I thought I'd go to America. So that's not happening. I'm going to Singapore. But my solution is, if you can't find what you need in the country that you're in, and you're as flexible or fortunate like I am to be able to flexibly move, do that, I guess. I want to continue pursuing science in whatever capacity that is. At the moment, it's in academia. Maybe it might end up being in more of an industry-related capacity if I'm not able to get my own funding. But I think ultimately we have to be flexible as scientists. And the positive spin is, I think, the global political scale and how it's influencing science and funding will always change over time. And I think hopefully in the future, we'll see a shift where there'll be more value to the role that we've contributed to civilization. And then funding will hopefully be more improved from there.
Yeah, I think the pendulum will, it swings back.
I want to bring back one thing that you said, Natasha. It's like we have to be flexible scientists. Because that's where my concern in this moment is. So concern for my career, yes. I mean, I'm in a situation in this moment. My partner is also in science, so we have a two-body problem, and that's not easy to solve, especially in Europe. So I went to Maastricht. One of the reasons I joined Maastricht was that it seemed like a place where you could find a lot of possibilities to continue your career in science. And then the government changed and lots of budget cuts happened. And we know the story because we've seen it so many times in so many countries in this moment. And so obviously that raises concern. And I cannot tell you the many, many times in which I thought about, hey, a bakery sounds like a great plan. But I think like the concern comes, but then there's also the fact that I believe in how great my science can be. Like I stumbled on this topic that is how to use vasculature to understand better brain functions, and I believe that's going to be a fantastic thing to explore. And I believe in being an open scientist and do science as an open scientist. And so concerns on me, yes. And as Ashlea was saying, if instead like my science and the way I want to be a scientist will work out and it's not necessarily in academia, then that's great as well.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. And this is sort of like something that I think about a lot. And that is mentoring and being mentored. So I noticed over the years, so I've been a PI for, I don't know, over 20 some years or more than that, but still over the years, and even when I was a graduate student. So when I went into graduate school, and maybe it's unique for me, I just sort of went there. I had an advisor, but they didn't really tell me what to do. And I just they said, well, figure something out and do it. And so I was very much out on a limb and I had to sort of do my own thing. And then even as a postdoc, I did my postdoc. And once again, my advisor was like, oh, well, just, here's all the tools, just do cool stuff. And that was, and then it's interesting though, when I finally became an advisor, over the years, I sense that there's more and more of a desire of postdocs coming in, and especially students of kind of wanting more for me to, they want me to sort of tell them in some sense, like, oh, this is your project, and this is what I want you to do. This is how it fits in with everything else, which is good. But at the same time, I feel it's just part of the training is to sort of like, completely think on your own, completely out there, and then get the feedback. So it's tricky. I'm still struggling with it myself as a person giving advice to people. And what's your perspective on that? I mean, so some of you are like, for instance, in Max Schein's lab, or does he plug you into a project, or does he allow you to sort of explore, or is there somewhere in between? It's kind of an art to try to figure out, what that sweet spot is, where they're guiding you yet allowing you to explore.
I think mentorship is hard. And I think the more senior or further through my career, the more I appreciate just how hard it is and how hard it is to do well. I think also because so much of ourselves is tied to the science that we do. So often as a mentor, you don't just wear one hat. You also have to support the person as a person, not just the science that they do.
Yep.
And I think this is an exceptionally hard balance to strike. So I've just got more gratitude over the time for the mentors that I've had. During my PhD, the process was that you kind of get introduced to all the projects within the lab. And then we were given some time to explore our curiosity and what we were interested in. And then from there, it wasn't a set project, but you'd see what you were interested in and then you'd do some reading. And then that would guide through to get to your project. So I guess it wasn't unconstrained, but it still let you pick what you were passionate about within the lab, which I actually think is really important for you to develop your own scientific interests.
Yeah, that's really great. I think, mentorship is really hard. In Max Schein's lab, it's very much more independent in that when I started with him in my undergrad, I had a very specific project that I was working on. And originally I thought I would continue pursuing that in my PhD. My curiosity changed and I had the independence and flexibility to sort of drive and tailor questions around what I was really interested in. And Mac has always been a champion of supporting, I think, everyone in his team to really pursue what they're interested in within a collaborative environment where different skill sets can be catered and can help you answer those questions. But everyone is different. So you join another team with a different supervisor and you don't have the same balance. And so you have to sort of adjust and like learn how to work within the constraints of having a different professor that has like a very specific goal for you. Or at least that's what my transition has been as a postdoc. And I think the challenge is always knowing what you prefer as a researcher as well. I learned like throughout my PhD that I think I want to be able to have more independence on what I'm interested in working on and finding a boss that will let me do that as well.
So I think in Japan, it's a little bit different, have a different system as the US or the European. For example, in our university, almost the fourth year's undergraduate students will be assigned to each level. So they are starting for like 1 year research, but almost of them doesn't know what is research. So the much of work for the professor in the lab, teaching them how to do the like design experiment and do data analysis. And only a few of them will be go to the master course. And at that time point, they will be have some original idea to do something, but they still did not have so strong fundamental base. So, and only a few of them will go to the doctor course. And at that time point, they will be have their original idea. But in Japan, almost all the PhD cannot have very strong financial support for to do their own project. So almost they follow the project with the professor or do something in the labs. Also, for I think for the very young assistant professor, they also have to be doing their work under some senior labs. So if I can change something, I would like to create a platform and let's support a younger researcher can have their own grant and do their own projects. Yeah, that's the situation in Japan now.
I don't have too much to add except that I'm having an amazing time with my PhD. I'm at Alex's lab where Ash also did her PhD, and yeah, it's just feeling well supported and well mentored and well looked after is such an special feeling. And I'd never sort of seen myself in sort of a mentoring role, but it's been so nice that sort of I keep sort of jotting down little notes. Oh, one day I'm going to be a mentor and make someone else feel this happy. And yeah, just no, I'm not entirely, I'm still not fully sure how Alex does it. Just being very intellectually engaged with your project, but at the same time, sort of letting you feel empowered to take it in whatever direction that you want, being there when unexpected stuff happens, being there when, yeah, it's just been an awesome experience. No complaints.
Yeah, no, it really is an art, and I think people, and this is one of those skills in academia that nobody ever fully masters. I think that you're always kind of learning and adjusting and adapting, and so that kind of brings up another sort of avenue a little bit, and you sort of inferred a little bit the difference in Japanese versus, I mean, it's sort of similar, but I mean, and I don't know if it varies between country as much as it varies between lab to lab. I mean, so several of you, you know, did work at, you know, at Yale and now here, or at Spain and Maastricht, and so and do you notice, if for those of you who are at different labs for different stages, do you notice any cultural differences, or is it just simply there's more of a difference between labs than cultures?
I would say that I think sort of pursuant to what Jiajia was talking about, there absolutely are sorts of structural constraints on mentoring. If sort of you live in a space where just graduate students are systematically sort of institutionally they're empowered, or like, you know, what avenues of support do they have? How much power do they have over sort of changing supervisors if things go poorly? How many supervisors are they expected to have? Do they have an independent, you know, panel member? All these things, I think, really shape sort of how the mentoring goes. And yeah, I think more than sort of cultural, these sorts of structural factors really shape them. And I mean, I've sort of worked in Iran before coming here, and yeah, I mean, I could write an essay about the differences. It's just like, yeah, night and day. Yeah.
Well, that's actually good advice of like what to look for when you're considering a lab. You kind of want to look for this infrastructure that sort of supports you in some regard. That's a critical thing that people don't always see, don't think about when they're looking
Yeah,
at labs.
absolutely.
So I moved from Australia to the US, but I didn't just move country. I moved into a different position, and then I also moved into a different field. And so this has actually been exceptionally challenging for me to work out what is cultural within the lab, what is cultural within the field, or what is cultural within the country. What are the norms and expectations? And so I'm still struggling through this, I think. Also, the field that I guess I've moved into is less open in the way in which they do science. And so this was a huge culture shock for me because I come to OHBM, people share their code, they share their data, they show unpublished data.
Yep.
That is not true for most other fields.
Yeah, you're right.
And I guess I want to reflect this question back to you. Was it always like this for you coming to OHBM, or what drove this community for OHBM?
It's funny because I think actually it sort of always has, because it always has been sort of intrinsically interdisciplinary. And so my personal philosophy, and I think that maybe I had it, just, it's always seems like even from a strategic standpoint, it's better to be like completely open with everything. Because if you spread it around, you'll have more connections and it's more robust. There's always some people in the field who are kind of paranoid about their code or something like that, or their results. They're like, oh, don't tell anyone else that I got this result. And I always think that's kind of silly. It's sort of like and maybe it's legit in some sense, but and there's always those elements. There's a few people, and there used to be at OHBM very early days. I remember distinctly somebody showing some results and then having somebody get up in the back and said, we did this first before you. And they actually got up, and I thought, oh my gosh, how obnoxious. And why would you care? Why would you talk? So that sort of conversation has died out a lot. And now it's considered, it's like, it's sort of like nothing is really a zero-sum game anymore. It's all like a win-win situation. So luckily that's changed a lot. So now people are more sharing in the field. I think it's because, maybe, who knows why, maybe because of this meeting, maybe because of the nature of, you really do need to work with people, and you really do need to be transparent. And that's kind of like valued now. So.
And it makes better science.
Yeah.
Maybe it just makes it harder to be stingy when you go like clubbing at your scientific communities conference once every year. No, I don't.
That could be a difference, right? Most other fields don't, they probably don't have club nights that they're at their meetings. In fact, that's very true. I mean, I think that this society is actually really, that's one thing about the society that's really good, is that it's really young. And I think that actually also keeps it vibrant and keeps the culture such that, it fosters this sort of thing. And if you have and some fields though are very, very old in terms of, like physics or something, where you have, people are very siloed in very detailed things, and they don't really need to share. They just have a pencil and paper or their computer or their thing. And also, yeah, it's very protective. But yeah. How much do you think where you're at right now is a result of, like, your skill, working hard, or serendipity, or pure luck? It's like, what, because maybe it's a combination, but I'm kind of curious.
I mean, let's be honest, it is a combination. You have to work hard, and working hard is important, but you also need to be at the right place in the right moment. I was speaking with a couple of colleagues now, and actually, no, sorry, I was speaking with a couple of friends at this point, going back to the club nights and networking in this community, and they were like, yeah, because like I'm exactly in that moment in which this grant did that thing for which I cannot apply, or like my university did that other thing for which I cannot continue anymore. So it's really like there is a component of luck in what we do, and being in the right place at the right time. I think one of the lessons that I remember from my school is my professor saying, yes, there's luck, but if you work hard and you put yourself out there, you create the occasion, and then eventually that's going to balance out the luck. And I think that's the lesson that I keep bringing between in this field and in these challenges today.
I think it's just luck is the vast. I think the work bit is a tiny sliver of it. There are just so many branching paths in my life where many things could have gone extremely differently, and now I'm here in this beautiful, amazing conference, surrounded by friends, and having an amazing mentor, and all that, and working on interesting things. Especially when you look at it from a global scale, like there are 7.5 billion people on this earth, and it's not great. The average person, is not thriving. Yeah, I feel like it's just 99.9% luck.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, skill is important, but some of the point you are lucky. For example, for me, I met my wife here because she loves science, so that's inspired me to be a scientist. And I started my PhD, and my supervisor gave me a lot of freedom. You can do everything. So I started to see the human brain function related haptic perception. So and then when I visit Peter's labs, and I just met Renzo Huber, and he just done the very optimized layer sequence, and he told me he has tested more than thousands of times, yeah, and it really can cover the human primary sensory cortex. Yeah, that's great. So I adapt that to the primary mental sensory cortex, and we got the first paper has been published in 2019. So yeah, I think luck is very important for us.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you were working very hard too, but I think actually I agree with all of you. It's like I feel like the world is kind of filled with all these opportunities, and you kind of have to develop a skill maybe of recognizing them. But then once you're on one, it's like riding a wave. You have to work hard to make the most of the opportunity, and that sort of goes along. But yeah, I think so. Speaking of skills, so I think that my personal feeling is one of the skills that is usually unanticipated when people are undergraduates. If they think of going into science, they're like working in a laboratory, and that's the skill of writing and communicating. And do you feel the same way? I mean, do you feel like how important is that skill?
You need to be good at writing and communicating. I don't think that that's a skill that you can't learn, though. I don't think I was very good when I first started writing. My first manuscript, Mac returned with red all over it, and then proceeded to call me and say that this is normal and you'll learn. And he's right. So I think communication, writing, presenting, all of that is really important in science, but it's not something that's unattainable. You can't, not improve, which means kind of like talking about whether it's hard work, luck, etc. These are things that you can work on to improve yourself as a scientist.
Yeah, for me, it's a muscle. You've got to keep using it to get better at it. Same as many of the skills that we have here.
Yeah. I mean, it may be a bit stereotypical because I'm Iranian, but I actually love poetry and florid writing. Scientific writing, I think, sort of has been a skill which, I generally enjoy sort of creative writing. I enjoy writing code. I enjoy like doing math. Like scientific writing has always been a bit of a challenge. I've had to really learn how to actually be concise and like where to start and end paragraphs. It's been a sort of learning process. I remember my sort of master's supervisor had this sort of big comment on sort of the first page of my introduction where she was like, "You're not trying to impress people with your why are you using all these phrases like the echoes of this of such genetic effects reverberate through the and it's like you can put it like more concisely and so yeah. I think just learning to aim for just how do I really sort of concisely communicate this message and sort of how do I anticipate my reader and what sort of structure they have of my project and what I'm trying to communicate in their head and what next step, what are they expecting me to say and what things might they misunderstand. All that sort of thing has been, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, it's a tough skill. I'm always trying to improve, and it's always something that you can improve depending on the context. And there's slightly different writing for grants, slightly different writing for papers, everything, and then even for giving presentations, there's an art to that as well. And and some of it is teachable, some of it's not. But you just got to iterate.
If I can continue on this conversation, yes, writing is important. There's no denying that, and that is actually one of my problems. I'm a person that likes to talk instead. And if I could talk to a machine and then that machine wrote for me, that would be the best. Luckily, we might be there. So that's great. But I don't think it's the only thing that is important. I don't think it's the only skill that is necessary. And I think, like Ashley was saying it before, there's so many different ways to do science, and there's so many paths that guide you to science. And a person that is not great at writing maybe is great at doing something else. And all of these skills can be learned. I honestly think like the only skill that cannot be learned or taught to a certain extent, like somebody needs to start with it from the beginning, is just resilience. Because that's what is going to bring us through what before I called luck, and now I'm tempted to call more like the randomness process of, stochastical events. But yeah, so it's...
I think this is one of the things that also surprised me of in academia, you have to do so many things, where if you're in another job, you would become an expert at a single thing. But here we mentor, we manage finances, we get finances, then we need to be an entrepreneur of coming up with projects, and then we need to run an entire team.
Yes.
And so there's so many different skills, which make it really hard to be perfect or great at any. And I think this just leads into why team science is so important as well. Of like, you don't have to be exceptional at everything. Bring other people in.
Yep, that's a good perspective. Yeah.
Um,
So a good wrap-up question, I guess. Let's see. Let me just see here. From your stage of your career, is there any advice that you feel like that you've gained, or the wisdom that you've gained that you'd want to convey about being successful in your stage, and also happy and fulfilled?
This is a very counterintuitive advice, but go with your gut, whether that's on a project, whether it's people you're meeting when you're, at least when I was interviewing and meeting people for a postdoc position, the intuition that you get when you're meeting somebody and you're talking about your science and your research ideas, you want to find a group of people that will support you and are excited about the same science that you're excited about. And when you meet those people, stay with them, collaborate with them. Don't necessarily choose other ideas like, oh, this other person's more successful at a more successful university. Like, find the niche of the people that is passionate like you are on the same sort of question or different questions, and work with those people. That would be my advice.
That's great advice. Yeah.
I guess 2 pieces. The first would be celebrate what's in your control. So celebrate the paper submission, not the paper acceptance. You can control whether you submit it. And then the other piece is similar to you, is celebrate your friends, celebrate your collaborators when they win things. They are part of your team. Don't see them as competitors.
Okay, first of all, if you're implying that we are successful, I thank you so much for that, Peter. That's and I think, yeah, it's, oh, hey, imposter syndrome here is at the roof. I think like one thing that we need to realize is like one suggestion that I would give is like, first thing first, there's not one definition of success. And I think like we need to understand what is our definition of success, and that will make things better eventually. Find mentors. Mentors are not just your PI. Mentors are your peers. Mentors can be found outside of academia. One of my choir directors for a while has been my mentor for science, which not because he was a scientist, but because like the lessons that I was learning from him for science. Like, I have so many mentors, and I'm so lucky to have so many mentors, and one of them is actually here next to me, and other people at this conference that are not my colleague in a day-to-day life, but it's people that can teach you. And then obviously there are the mentors in science, like my PIs and the people around us that are there, and it's important to find the right clique. And that would be the suggestion that I would give. And otherwise, hey, bakeries, once more, great choice. Just not everybody has to do science.
Can I tell a little Australian anecdote before we... So there was, I think she was an engineer. She worked in the F1 for a while. She quit her job. She went to...
she worked in what?
She was an engineer working in the F1.
Oh.
She quit her job, moved to Paris, learned to perfect the art of making a croissant, and now has a very successful bakery called Loon in Australia.
Oh,
so
wait,
I think you can use your scientific skills to make bread.
That's true, yeah.
Wait, is this Loon the just wow? What a story. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
The first thing, simply just to follow the path of the successful people that cannot guarantee you will be get to the same success because you need luck, you need some skills. So I was want to say just find a great collaborator and make sure your direction is correct, and then try to keep to doing the new things and that does not stop. That's my advice. Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, I think most of what I would say has been said. Can I make just a small sort of observational note? I am so ceaselessly inspired and impressed by just all of you and by scientists and people in my community. And I'm early on in my career, so I sort of I still don't fully identify, as a scientist, or everyone, when I sort of think of calling myself a neuroscientist, it's a bit cringe. But when I sort of look at just, these people who move countries to continue their work, juggle sort of extremely difficult personal situations to continue doing what they do, just learn all these difficult things, sort of apply for grants, write a thesis through depression, just dealing with so much. And yeah, it's just, I'm so impressed. And, every once in a while I see some horrid take on social media about how, these, sort of charlatan sort of scientists who care only to line their pockets or something. And I'm like, oh my God, if only you knew, my friends, if only I could sort of take your hand and sort of get you to just talk to these people and just for an hour and sort of hear their story. It's, just an amazing community of people. I guess if I had one piece of advice to give sort of to a younger version of me, it would be to just find a community of people who inspire you and just latch onto them.
Yeah, that's great advice as well. I mean, it's sort of very similar themes in many ways. I mean, if you find a good group of people to work with, one person, whatever, and it clicks, that's sometimes all you need for your entire career. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
But to recognize that. So okay, well, thank you very much. And let's give you a round of applause. This was great. It was great. So we didn't have time for audience questions. I'm sorry. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. So thanks. All right.
Neurosalience is brought to you by Organization for Human Brain Mapping. This week's episode is produced by Xuqian Michelle Li and Omer Faruk Gulban.